The silence of rural Nova Scotia is a heavy thing. It is a silence built of ancient spruce, damp earth, and a fog so thick it can swallow the very memory of a person. For months, that silence was all the Sullivan family had. But as the morning mist begins to lift over the dense, unforgiving woods, the quiet is finally being shattered. It isn't being broken by the sound of laughter or the pitter-patter of small feet. Instead, it is being ripped apart by a chilling revelation. The very objects meant to provide comfort to a child, a favorite toy, a warm sweater, a pink blanket, have become final threads leading investigators straight to the front door of betrayal. If you believe that 6-year-old Lilly and 4-year-old Jack Sullivan deserve the truth, then you understand the weight of this moment. For too long, the narrative was one of a tragic accident. 2 children wandering off into the wilderness, lost to the elements. But the balance of probabilities has shifted. When you search an area with hundreds of volunteers, drones, and infrared cameras and find absolutely nothing, no shoe, no backpack, no physical trace, logic dictates a shift in perspective. As many experts have now noted, when the woods yield nothing, the answer usually lies in a more nefarious direction. We are no longer looking for lost children. We are looking for a criminal conspiracy. The breakthrough began with Lilly Sullivan's pink blanket. To a casual observer, it was just a piece of fabric, but to the RCMP, it became Exhibit A. The history of this blanket is a roadmap of deception. Investigators have successfully traced its journey from a humble family trash bin to a remote ATV trail kilometers away. It wasn't just found, it was forensic gold. Testing confirmed Lilly's DNA was embedded in the fibers, but the condition of the blanket told the real story. It had been torn in two. Half was left in the trash, and the other half was snagged in the brambles of a trail where no 6-year-old could have wandered alone in the middle of the night. This discovery prompted a simple, haunting question. Who would carry a child's comfort object into the dark woods and deliberately tear it apart? The answer began to materialize through digital footprints. The RCMP cross-referenced local records and discovered that an ATV had been checked out on the very eve of the children's disappearance. This wasn't a coincidence. This vehicle was tracked to the exact trail where the blanket fragment was recovered. Rental agreements show the quad was in service at 9:30 p.m. on May 1st. Cell tower logs further tightened the noose, showing the vehicle idling in the deep brush for 45 minutes, a window of time perfectly suited for someone to disembark, plant evidence, and retreat under a shroud of darkness. But the most devastating blow to the accidental wandering theory came from the cell phone of the one person who should have been the children's protector, their mother, Molly Kia Brooks Murray. While she was making public pleas for help, claiming she was out of province on the night of the disappearance, the digital ghosts of her phone were telling a different story. Cell tower data placed her in the exact same grid cell as the children at midnight. Her alibi was a house of cards. There were no flight manifests to prove she left, no hotel receipts to track her stay, and no witnesses to verify her location. By the time the sun rose on May 2nd, the digital evidence suggests she was back at Lansdowne Station, hours before she ever called the police to report her children missing. When the RCMP secured Brooks Murray's rental car, the interior was a crime scene in miniature. Hidden in the trunk was a single pink sock, caked in the specific mud of the Nova Scotia backcountry. Beside it sat a half-eaten granola bar, later confirmed to bear Jack's DNA. Most damning of all was a tuft of blonde hair, entwined with those same pink fibers from Lilly's blanket. Independent forensic experts are now coming forward to state that accidental transfer is an impossibility. This wasn't a case of a mother accidentally carrying a stray hair on her coat. This was a deliberate concealment. This was the physical evidence of a mother who had turned her own car into a vessel for a dark secret. The investigation has moved past the trees and the trails. It has moved into the heart of a calculated performance designed to hide the truth in plain sight. As the physical evidence began to pile up in the evidence lockers of the RCMP, a second, perhaps more disturbing, layer of the investigation began to unfold in the digital realm. Investigators had long suspected that the truth was buried deep within encrypted apps and cloud backups, places where people think their secrets are safe from the light of day. When the RCMP cybercrime units finally obtained the necessary legal warrants to pierce these digital veils, what they found was enough to send a shiver through even the most seasoned detective. They unearthed deleted voice memo files, cached in the corner of a secure cloud. These weren't messages for help. They were takes. Imagine a mother sitting in the dark, phone in hand, recording the same chilling phrases over and over again. Audio specialists have analyzed these files and confirmed the voice belongs to Molly Brooks Murray. The recordings capture her saying, "Once they're gone, nobody will search here again, and keep them quiet until help arrives." Each recording is slightly different, with Brooks Murray's tone becoming more controlled, more emotive, and more convincing with every pass. This was not the sound of a grieving mother. It was the sound of a performer rehearsing her lines under pressure. It suggests a level of premeditation that changes the charges from negligence to a full-scale criminal conspiracy. The digital trail didn't end with her phone. In a twist that sounds like something out of a thriller, anonymous USB drives were delivered to the local detachment. These drives contained high-quality audio captured from inside the Sullivan trailer by a neighbor's smart device. In the background of one clip, a second voice, now believed to be a family acquaintance, can be heard whispering a command that would haunt the investigation: dispose of the evidence after dark. The RCMP has seized these Janey recordings as critical evidence. While they haven't been released to the public due to their disturbing nature, they have fueled a firestorm of speculation that the conspiracy to remove Lilly and Jack involved more than just one person. The search then pivoted to the visual. Armed with the knowledge of the ATV and the voice memos, forensics teams began a grueling review of local surveillance footage. Hunting cameras from private cabins, situated half a mile from the main roads, captured a hooded figure carrying a heavy duffel bag toward the ATV trail at the break of dawn on May 2nd. The shape and color of that bag were a perfect match for the one later recovered from the trunk of Brooks Murray's rental car. Furthermore, provincial drone flights using night vision captured something even more heartbreaking: 2 sets of small footprints in the soft mud beside the ATV tracks. They were only there briefly, appearing as if the children had been standing still before being hoisted into a vehicle. Every account from the community began to align with this new, darker timeline. Neighbors reported hearing the roar of a high-powered engine at an hour when the woods should have been silent. One witness recalled seeing a woman leaving a rental cabin late at night, her boots caked in mud and her hood pulled tight to hide her face. These weren't just random sightings anymore. When cross-referenced with the digital logs and the GPS data from the ATV, they formed a timeline that was too precise to be ignored. The RCMP's Major Crime Task Force has now officially shifted its stance. This is no longer a search for lost children. It is an investigation into obstruction of justice, mischief endangering life, and a deliberate plan to remove 2 children from their lives. Behind the closed doors of the RCMP headquarters, a restricted memo has been circulating. Its subject is hidden evidence and intent to conceal. The memo argues that Brooks Murray used her online presence, her live streams, her tearful media appearances, and her constant updates as a tactical distraction. She wasn't seeking help. She was orchestrating a performance to keep the public and the police looking at the forest while she hid the truth in the digital shadows. Her devotion, once praised by the community, is now being viewed through the cold lens of a calculated maneuver. But the lies are unraveling. Federal forensics are currently enhancing convenience store footage from a neighboring province, which may show 2 small figures matching Lilly and Jack's description. The world is watching, and for the first time in months, the momentum is on the side of the truth. We are moving closer to the moment when the silence of the woods is replaced by the gavel of justice. The transition from a search and rescue mission to a major crime investigation is a heavy turning point for any community. But for the people of Pictou County, it was a moment of profound betrayal. For weeks, the narrative fed to the public was one of mother's tireless devotion. Molly Brooks Murray had become the face of the search, her tearful pleas for the return of Lilly and Jack echoing across social media platforms. But as the RCMP's Major Crime Unit began to peel back the layers of her story, the image of the grieving mother began to dissolve, replaced by the chilling profile of a woman who had calculated every move. The investigation had moved past the surface-level search and into the Lansdowne Station timeline, a period of several hours that Brooks Murray could not account for without contradicting the digital evidence. A key pillar of any criminal investigation is the verification of movement. Brooks Murray had told everyone, investigators, neighbors, and her own family, that she was out of the province on the night of May 1st. She claimed she was miles away, disconnected from the events at the Sullivan trailer. However, the silent witnesses of the digital age do not forget. Forensic analysts found that her cell phone had pinged off a tower in the rural Lansdowne area at 2 a.m. This was the smoking gun that shifted the focus of the entire task force. If she was where she said she was, her phone would have been hundreds of kilometers away. Instead, it was right there, moving through the same grid cell as the very woods where the children were last seen. When investigators confronted her with this data, the cracks became chasms. There were no flight manifests for her alleged trip. No hotel receipts were found. No one could place her in another city. Instead, surveillance footage from a local gas station, long overlooked, showed her vehicle moving toward the back roads just before dawn. The RCMP's tone shifted immediately. They were no longer asking for tips on where the children might have wandered. They were now asking for anyone who had seen Brooks Murray's vehicle between the hours of midnight and 6 a.m. This change in strategy was bolstered by the discovery of the rental cabin records. The cabin, which she had secretly rented under a different name, became the focal point of the forensic sweep. Inside that cabin, investigators found more than just a place to stay. They found traces of a staging area. It appeared that the children had been there, briefly, before the search even began. The neighbors near this remote rental described hearing a vehicle engine roar at an odd hour, a sound that cut through the silence of the woods like a knife. One witness recalled seeing a woman matching Brooks Murray's description, unloading a heavy duffel bag in the pre-dawn light. This bag, later found in her car's trunk, contained the pink sock and the granola bar with Jack's DNA. This wasn't an accidental wandering. It was a relocation. The children had been moved under the cover of darkness, and the pink blanket had been torn and scattered as a red herring to lead searchers deep into the woods while the Real Trail went cold. The most disturbing evidence found in the cabin, however, was the presence of a second set of prints, larger, adult prints that did not match Brooks Murray. This confirmed the theory of a co-conspirator. The Janey recordings captured a voice that was not hers, whispering about disposing of evidence. This second individual is now believed to be a family acquaintance, someone with the local knowledge required to navigate the complex ATV trails of Nova Scotia without being spotted. The RCMP began drafting warrants not just for Brooks Murray, but for this unidentified partner in crime. The investigation was now treating the disappearance as a removal, a planned operation intended to keep the children hidden from the world and possibly from their other family members for reasons that are only now beginning to surface. The performance that Brooks Murray put on for media is now being analyzed by behavioral experts. They point to her live streams as a form of investigative mirroring, where a suspect stays close to the investigation to monitor what the police know. Every time she appeared on camera, she wasn't just crying for her children. She was watching the RCMP's reaction. She was gauging whether her plan to scatter the pink blanket had worked. But she underestimated the power of modern forensics. The accidental snagging of that blanket on a branch 7 kilometers away was too perfect, too convenient. To a seasoned detective, it didn't look like a child's path. It looked like a trail of breadcrumbs left by someone who wanted the search parties to look exactly where they were told to look. As of this morning, the state of the Sullivan case has reached a fever pitch. Molly Brooks Murray is now in custody, held under a publication ban, while the RCMP lays out a series of formal charges that include obstruction of justice, criminal conspiracy, and mischief endangering life. The atmosphere in Pictou County is one of somber resolution. The thousands of hours poured into the woods by volunteers were not in vain. They proved where the children weren't, forcing the police to look at the people who were closest to them. The search has moved from the forest floor to the foundations of the family's own secrets. The current phase of the investigation is focused on a series of remote properties. Search warrants have been executed on an abandoned shack where backpack liners were found, and a second trailer where investigators made a heart-wrenching discovery. Inside, they found children's vitamins and a drawing. It was a simple, homemade crayon sketch titled Me and Jack by the River. This drawing was a month old. It was fresh. It suggests that the children were alive and being held in these secondary locations long after the initial search parties had given up on the surrounding woods. This has given a renewed sense of urgency to the task force. They are no longer just looking for evidence. They are in a race against time to find 2 children who may still be waiting for help. To aid in this search, the RCMP has brought in specialized technology. Search and rescue divers are revisiting water sources, drainage ditches, and abandoned wells. Using new sonar technology and ground-penetrating radar, they are scanning areas where a vehicle could have easily stopped and discarded items. A ground-penetrating radar team is scheduled to begin work tomorrow in a field near the ATV trail, looking for anomalies beneath the soil. The goal is to find any hidden compartments or burial sites that might hold the final answers to this tragedy. The tone from senior officers has changed from one of hope to one of grim determination. They are building a case that is designed to be airtight, ensuring that those responsible will never have a chance to manipulate the narrative again. Defense lawyers for Brooks Murray have already signaled their strategy. They intend to argue that she was suffering from extreme mental distress and will attempt to dispute the chain of custody for the pink blanket. They want to suggest that the evidence was planted or contaminated. However, the sheer volume of corroborating data, the ATV logs, the cell tower pings, the voice memos, and the physical items found in her trunk, makes for a mountainous challenge for any legal team. This wasn't a single mistake. It was a sequence of deliberate actions taken over several days. Each torn fiber of that pink blanket and each take of the rehearsed voice memos points toward a singular conclusion. The children didn't disappear. They were taken. The Sullivan family, led by grandmother Belinda Gray, has been through an unimaginable ordeal. Their pleas for Amber Alerts were initially met with procedural delays, and they watched as the person they trusted most led the community on a wild goose chase through the Nova Scotia wilderness. Now, they sit in the front row of a legal battle that will likely take years to resolve, but the focus remains on Lilly and Jack. Are they still in the province? Or does a convenience store footage from another province truly show them being moved even further away? The RCMP is coordinating with child protection agencies across the country, sharing the enhanced footage and the DNA profiles in hopes of citing. The world is still listening. The voices of Lilly and Jack may have been silenced on that foggy morning in May, but the collective outcry for justice has only grown louder. Every share of the investigation's details, every prayer dropped in the comments, and every person who keeps their eyes open for a little girl with a pink blanket or a boy with a granola bar helps keep the pressure on. The truth is no longer buried in the woods. It is being dragged into the light, piece by piece. The RCMP Major Crime Unit continues to work around the clock, fueled by the knowledge that the endless quiet of rural Nova Scotia is finally being replaced by the loud, persistent demand for the truth. The arrest of Molly Brooks Murray was not the end of the story. It was merely the first domino to fall in a much larger, much more sinister structure of lies. As the RCMP's Major Crime Task Force delved into the contents of the seized Janey recordings and encrypted voice memos, a startling pattern emerged. This was not the work of a mother acting in a vacuum of panic. It was a coordinated effort that required local knowledge, logistical support, and a shared silence that lasted for months. The investigation has now shifted its focus toward a family acquaintance heard in the background of those chilling audio clips, the voice that whispered about disposing of evidence under the cover of night. The identity of the second individual has become the pivot point for the entire criminal case. Investigators believe this person provided the mechanical means for the children's removal, including the ATV used to navigate the backwoods and the secondary properties used as temporary holding cells. By cross-referencing cell tower handoffs between Brooks Murray's device and those of her inner circle, the RCMP has identified a series of synchronized movements. On the night of May 1st, while the rest of the community slept, 2 distinct signals moved in a pincer maneuver around the Lansdowne Station area. One signal stayed on the main roads to act as a lookout, while the other, the one tied to the ATV rental, descended into the deep brush where the pink blanket was eventually recovered. This level of planning suggests a motive far beyond a simple domestic dispute. The RCMP is currently investigating the financial and custody-related histories of everyone involved. They're looking for the why behind the how. Was this an attempt to hide the children from a pending court order? Or was it something even more dark and permanent? The restricted memo circulated among senior ranks suggests that the co-conspirator may have been the one to suggest the performance strategy to Brooks Murray. By keeping her in the public eye as a grieving victim, they ensured that the police would be hesitant to treat her as a suspect in the early, critical hours of the disappearance. It was a shield of perceived innocence that allowed the trail to go cold. Further evidence of a wider conspiracy came from the Northeast Nova surveillance grid. While Brooks Murray was making her live-stream pleas for help, forensic digital units were tracking a series of pings to an encrypted messaging server. These messages, though heavily scrambled, showed a burst of activity every time a new search area was announced by the RCMP. It appeared that someone was feeding real-time information to a third party, allowing them to move items, or perhaps the children themselves, just ahead of the search teams.